right, you coming? Okay. All right, good evening, everybody. We'll go ahead and get started with our work session agenda for Tuesday, July 15, 2025. First item on our agenda is the 2026 budget session number one. Turn it over to staff.
All right, we'll hop right in. So this is the first of 5 budget sessions. So you'll have something really fun to look forward to each of the next 5 work sessions. And tonight we'll focus mostly on revenue, talk a little bit about economic trends, and then we will do a deeper dive into our enterprise funds than we normally do at this point, because there are lots of fun factors coming up that we're going to need to address in this process. So it's never too early to start to talk about those, and I've asked Ty to be available if you have any really hard questions on those as we go through it. We'll just hop right in. So we have completed sales tax reporting through April. We did just get Weld County's information for May just in the last couple of days, so that'll be shortly coming as well. But we're in a good positive starting point that a lot of other communities aren't at this point. So kind of take a breath and know that we're at least starting from a decent step as we begin this budget process. So we're 4% over 2024 year-to-date collections through April, 5% over our original budget. All sectors of our reporting are showing positive collections except for motor vehicle. And we've kind of been, if you've read some of those monthly reports that Cody's been putting in his city manager update, that full April report's in tonight's packet. It gives a little bit more context to why, but we've been trailing the motor vehicle collections a little differently for us than the statewide. And you can see on that right side chart there, February and March started really flat in the year. We were kind of holding our breath, hoping that that wasn't going to be month by month what we saw for the whole year. So quarterly we see spikes in sales tax collections because we have some quarterly only filers. And we see that spike at year end when we have annual filers as well. So March and April did perform better than the first 2 months of the year. So off to a good start at least. And I will point out before I move off this slide, the convenience and fuel category is up 25%. So nice to see those new fueling stations open and operating here in the city. And then online sales are up 22%. So the last couple of years, as we've talked in budget, for that online selling category, we project double-digit increase year over year. We're waiting to see when that starts to slow, and luckily we haven't seen it yet. In the general fund in total, we're projected to be just shy of $12 million in collections for this year. And when we look forward to our 2026 budget, it'll actually come down a little bit by 0.4%. So it doesn't sound like much. We do anticipate an $11.9 million general fund sales tax budget, and that is a 3% increase from this year's original budget. So when we're looking at trends like this too, the last 3 years have been a little bit more flat than you would like to see in a growing city, an expanding city. And as we start to talk about costs and the expense side at the next work session, those costs are increasing faster than this revenue line is increasing. Kind of go back to that by category view in our sales taxes here for a moment, and this is how the $11.9 million is broken down for the 2026 budget. Again, this is general fund at the top. You'll notice the industrial line there is 50% with a negative. So we are only relying on 50% of those industrial collections. We know that those could go away. We've seen years where that's almost nothing. We've seen years like last year where it was in the millions. Very, very hard to predict something that we would want to discount more heavily. Our financial policies do dictate that for those revenue streams that are a little bit more volatile and unpredictable, that we discount them at a higher rate. So we have a 50% starting point there at that industrial. Our motor vehicle is the one that's trending below budget, as I mentioned in our April report. But we are seeing and projecting good increases in the restaurant category as McDonald's comes online. That will help significantly for the 2026 budget. And then sprinkled in some of those other categories, you'll see they're all positive, 3, 4, 5% for our base and our storefront retail, and the bulk of some of those businesses here at the city. We do also include the food tax and the road tax budgets here as well, even though they're not in the general fund. The food tax budget for next year, we anticipate to be about $2.4 million. That's an 8% increase. And the road tax is just over $4 million next year. So just a slight increase, very similar to the general fund budget, since that's 1% of everything we collect. I will just mention, each year we look at this budget and do lots of different gut checks to make sure that we have the right trends and the right variances accounted for properly. And one thing we like to do is to take out that industrial category, and we say, how is the city performing without that? Because it's not always very indicative to the normal spending of our community. And so if you remove that out of our budget, we're actually projecting a 6% increase over this year, due in part by the 15% in restaurant, some of those higher collections of categories online going up 15% as well. So if we step back and we think, okay, if we're not taking the industrial category into consideration, how are we performing? How do we expect to perform? We do expect a 6% increase in that budget for next year. And I'll pause for a second. There's been some really great listserv emails over the last week, from CML finance directors in the state. And a lot of them are asking, hey, how are your sales tax revenues? Where are you guys at? And, let's think forward. What are folks doing for compensation for next year? Because that's the biggest question on everyone's mind as we're starting budgeting as well. And a lot of flat cities. A lot of, we're up 0.5%. We're up 1%. We're down 3%. There were a couple of mountain communities, a little bit more tourism, that are seeing, hey, we're up 12% sales tax year over year. Very unusual, though. I'd say the bulk of the cities that responded are performing like us or even more flat. So it's a starting point that many of us are in. We're starting to hear other cities say, hey, we already think our budget next year is going to have a however many $1 million deficit. We're not alone in the revenue flattening curve. So not that that's great news, but we are definitely not alone on that.
What about communities our size? Like, what does that look like?
All across the board, it's been pretty flat. I think those that are smaller like us have been more flat too, unless they're in kind of those mountain communities.
Yep.
Sure. Next major revenue topic is property tax. And you can see kind of the peaks and valleys here that we've experienced since 2018. And those are primarily due to oil and gas valuations and productions as well. So we know we will continue to see ebbs and flows of that as well. Over this time frame, that 8-year average has produced about $843,000 each year on an average basis. We are actually attending a session on Thursday. By we, I mean Elsa. Thank you, Elsa. And we'll get more information from Brenda Dones on Thursday and kind of what some initial valuation projections are. So we've chosen to hold flat in this year's budget, or for 26's budget, similar to what we expect to receive this year until we have more information. It's not worth throwing other assumptions that we don't know yet. But we do know, and you guys have had lots of great conversations over these last few months, the future planning for a mill levy solution will forever be in these topics. $883,000 we know doesn't go very far, and with other revenue streams decreasing or flattening, this will continue to be something that we'll need to look at and plan for in the future. But we'll update this as soon as we have more information from Weld County. A few other major revenue sources in the general fund. First one is development-related revenue. And the highlight here is we have no new major housing units projected after 2027. So we have historically over these last few years taken a 5-year average. We know these planned units that are coming online won't always happen in total in the year that we think they might, or that the developer thinks that might all come to fruition. So we smooth that so that we have a smoothing of our revenue, and we have a more smooth level of expenditures that we know we will also need to pay for that level of service. But it's becoming more difficult in those outer years without those new units coming on. So we're relying a lot on just normal levels of home remodels and roofs and decks and all the things that our community is adding on to new homes or remodeling in old homes. to fill in a lot of what our building permits and use tax revenues are made up of. So the building permit's about $585,000, and again, that's built into our revenue projections for the next 5 years. And use tax revenue a little higher, $780,000. So hopefully, as development continues, then those planned units will come on board, and those can increase as we have more development. We did maybe 2 years ago take out peak view or solstice from these calculations until that project comes online. So there is potential. There's communities that can help with these numbers, but we're not reliant on them today. On the facility rental recreation side of the house, the headline here is there's a decrease in the budgeted revenues there as well. So overall, a 17% decrease is what we have slotted in right now. Jen Bimonti and I worked quite a bit on some of these revenues, and the recreation staff has lots of great ideas. They're looking at ways to increase the participation of some of the programs, increase those offerings. I think that recreation master plan has been really helpful for this as well. But they're facing a decrease in nationwide participation rates. So again, Evans isn't alone in there being less demand for recreation programs as a competitive youth sports program continues to grow at a younger age each year. That's a challenge that they're trying to work around as well. So they're trying to look at what they can do to increase those. And on the rental side of things as well, some of the recent policy changes for curfew and allowing alcohol, those are starting to have an effect on the number of rentals and parties that are being booked here as well. So we want to be really realistic on the revenue we expect next year, and the associated expenses to provide these services is where we're working on now to make sure that those align with the revenue levels we expect.
I have a question. Are we waiting for questions
Yeah,
at the end?
At the end, yes.
There should be plenty of time. Severance taxes are another big one we like to keep a close eye on. Even more of a ebbs and flows here because it's completely oil and gas revenue. It is distributed to us via the state, and we have very, very little control over it. So it's one that we also hedge because it's more volatile in nature. We have seen this provide over $1 million of revenue. Some years we have seen this provide $100,000 of revenue. One source, again, that we don't want to be completely reliant on. So we have hedged this one a little bit. And then a few other major sources I didn't want to forget to talk about are Greeley IGA sales taxes. So the revenue share back that we get from the businesses that are on the line of demarcation. Greeley's sales are up about 3%. So that revenue brings in about $1.5 million. So definitely notable there. Our franchise fees are trending, and we expect that to continue. So we have a 6% increase in next year's budget. Our police fines have been low these last few years as our police department has struggled with staffing levels, and something that I hope we can work on this next year. And then oil and gas royalties, we have set a kind of base floor level of about $100,000 in our budget for next year. Again, this is a source that was incredibly fruitful for us in 2024. We got $2.4 million of oil and gas royalties, helped us to buy some of our heavy equipment, fund a lot of our one-time list here in the spring of some of the asset replacements and some beautification items, although we can't rely on that to come in. And if it does come in, again, we'll be grateful and find some notable projects to put that money towards. So in summary, the 2026 budget, there's that lighter column. We're just under $20 million in the general fund in total. Excuse me. We do have ARPA funds removed from this chart, so it didn't skew it anymore in those prior years. But you'll see 2024 was notably high. So we were at $25 million. Like I mentioned, the oil and gas royalties, we had some grants in there. We had a really high amount of severance tax, really great interest earnings. We're always looking at how do we invest our money so it's as secure as possible, but it's also earning us interest. And so we're trying every angle we can to make sure that the money we're holding and that we have is secure, is working for us, or is being put to work. as we look at this on a 5-year plan, very, very early stages, right? But I did want to kind of let you know what we're seeing so far as we're plugging these pieces in. So you'll see 2026 there in the light blue in the middle. We anticipate that budget year to begin somewhere in the $9.9 million range. It will probably be higher because we won't spend every dollar that we have invested in a capital project or budgeted for a capital project won't all get spent this year. So as we march towards the end of this year, close out 2025, don't be surprised when this ends up being higher, and we'll carry forward those expenses again next year. But our revenues, including some transfers in, a little over $21 million. Expenditures, you'll see very, very similar, $21.1 million. So we have a negative net result right now of $21,000. That means all of those revenues we just talked about aren't enough to have paying for in total the expenditures in just kind of a carry forward scenario. So we're currently working towards what are those supplies and services needs with departments. Many of them have done great work in looking at what a 5% reduction would look like for their department, what that impact might be. Some are more noteworthy than others. We'll talk about that at the next work session about what's at risk if we're not able to fund things in entirety. And comp and class, our personnel budget has, I think, a 4% increase at this point. We know it is getting more expensive every day to have even the size of staff that we do. So we do have an increase built in there right now, which will be that third work session. We'll talk budget. Very close to zero. So I think that, these numbers we can get there. I'm not in a panic mode for this year. We do have some work to do though. As we look at those net results, those are all negative in the future, going out to $1 million. And I have a note in there that negative net result does mean the costs are larger than the revenues. And I did want to clarify as we look at these 5-year plans, those beginning fund balance and those ending fund balance amounts are positive. That's good. That means our reserves are working. The reasons we're holding reserves are appropriate. We will look at those reasons more closely, and we'll look at what an adequate level of reserves to hold next year are at one of the upcoming sessions. But that negative net results means in that current year by year look, the revenues are less than the cost to provide service in any year. So we'll see what the next few sessions hold. I feel like we've got some work to do. As I mentioned, a lot of cities are in much worse scenario, and when they plugged in initial figures, I heard a lot of our neighboring cities say, okay, we have a multiple millions of dollars gap that we know we're going to have to cut before we really can look at adding anything to our budget. So we're definitely not there, but anything we add in 2026 will only compound those problems in the next 5 years with the revenues at a more conservative level. So we always play this game in budgeting. It's an art and a science as well. And will some of these figures that we just talked about come in? Will we have $1 million of excess revenue? I sure hope we do. We have been extremely fortunate in the past few years for that to be the case, but we have always made sure that we could pay our bills. We have always made sure that we are structurally balanced for our budget for that year, and that we are spending within our means. And when additional revenues come in, then you as a council have done a great job in putting that back in our community and putting those dollars to work. But we have some work to figure this out. And this is probably going to be the structure we're in for the next few years until something major changes in our revenues or something major changes in our expenditures. Okay, now that I've bummed everybody out at the end there, we'll talk about a couple of our enterprise funds piece and then can have all the questions. So we do have 3 enterprise funds: water, wastewater, and storm. And the major revenue sources are essentially the same for a lot of them. But if I may divert on a tangent for a minute, what's really cool about enterprise funds is it's a completely different thought process than what we just went through in the general fund, right? In the general fund, we're thinking, let's look at all of our revenues. How many of these times is it going to occur? What's the rate? And we do fund calculations, and it tells us, great, you have $21 million to work with. The enterprise funds are the opposite. These are enterprise business funds by nature. The fees and the revenues are created to support the service that these enterprise funds are providing, right? So for the water fund, for instance, those major revenue sources are user rates, system development fees. We set those rates based on all of the needs and the cost of the system. So kind of have to really shift our thought process as we go to the enterprise funds. If we look at the rates for the water fund, that base rate is what is set and pays for ongoing maintenance and operation of the water system. So to be able to provide water to your home, those are the base fees to make sure it can get to your house safely. That rate has increased about 3 to 6% over the past 5 years, fairly close to a consumer price index cost adjustment each year. It's currently $24.63, as you all know. And then that consumption rate is what funds the treatment and related services. So you do have the two pieces that do pay for two separate components of that system, really. And you'll recall in the last rate study we did add a fourth tier. And that lowest rate is $5.89 to help give that opportunity for our lower water users to have money saving potential. It's good for water conservation and it's good for your dollar if you can save as well. The water fund has lots of fun challenges coming up in the future years. Greeley rate increases, you guys know, is one that we're always talking about. I forget the exact percentage, but it probably will change anyhow. But we're looking at double-digit increases from Greeley for next year. So right away we know we have historically not had any other option but to pass on directly what those rates are from Greeley. We will likely have to do the same this next year. Additional challenges like participation in NISP and that timeline and what the annual costs are going to be, what the debt could be. The water resources master planning that Ty's doing will give us lots of other options, hopefully, on how to secure future water resources, as well as capital needs, maintenance needs, not only for just our potable lines, but the ditch program, the non-potable system, how do we fund water conservation? All of those expenses come into securing what is a necessary level of expense so that we know that we are charging rates that are appropriate to pay for all these needed items in the water fund. So the water fund has otherwise been doing pretty well. The fund balance this year is anticipated to be about $6.9 million. And we hold for the purposes of upcoming system expansion or plant expansion fee. If we ever reach the Greeley cap that we talk about, we know we have to have money to invest in that system to continue to get the level of treated water that this community needs. Our operating reserve is a required 3 months of our operating expenses. It's about $1.8 million. And then we have a small amount there, $350,000 of available fund balance that's not in one of those other two buckets. When we have a higher level of development, we will also hold money for NISP. Currently, though, the NISP annual charges have been more than a portion of the development fees that we're getting in those TAP fees for water. So there's nothing additional to hold in reserve for NISP right now. Similar for the wastewater fund, again, same major revenue, user rates and system development fees to tie into that system. We now have a base and a volumetric or a consumption-based charge in wastewater, similar to as we do in water. And that base rate's risen about 5% in the past 2 years as well, since we did the last rate study. And the volumetric or that consumption rate is $5.89 for each 1,000 gallons over that 4,000. If you remember, if you look at your bill closely, both the water and the wastewater rates do include that first 4,000 gallons of use. Lots of fun challenges and changes ahead for the wastewater fund as well. We know the plant expansion is hot on the priority list to figure out what the proper stages and phasing and how we will pay for those large costs. Again, as that process goes through and we take out additional debt to do whatever expansion is necessary, that will have a direct impact on the wastewater rates. We know that we have a number of emergency repairs we've had to do here in these last couple of months. Repairs along the Ashcroft Draw sewer line. We have some large capital projects that are currently not funded yet that will need to be funded, probably in all three enterprise funds, to be honest. So as we talk capital projects, we're really gonna have to dig and figure out what level are we able and wanting to pay for to get some of these major projects done. They're not getting any cheaper. And then the fund balance in the wastewater fund is growing as well. So it decreased in 22 when we decommissioned the prior site, and then has been rebuilding since then. We do hold an increasing amount each year for plant replacement, both for equipment and plant. So we have some money set aside to help for that wastewater plant expansion, which is good. A lot of our funding sources are reducing the maximum amount that they will loan. So when we took out the first debt component for the $40 million was an SRF loan. Those are capped at about 18 million now. So when we're looking at how would we fund another $40 million project, it will take multiple sources. And that's something we maybe took for granted in years where we could just ask for one loan to do a project. Some of these reserves in this way might really be beneficial in our projects. We have annual debt service in that fund of about $2.4 million. So we hold reserves to make sure that if something happened, we could still make our debt payment that next year. And we have an operating reserve a little more than $500,000. So we have available fund balance in the wastewater fund as part of that $8.7 million. And that sounds great, but Robbie's projects are really expensive. He's not here tonight. When he needs capital money, he needs, $4 million. And so we're continuing to try to hold, excuse me, and save where we can to be able to accomplish some of these maintenance projects. And then lastly is our smallest of our three enterprise funds, which is our storm drainage fund. We've had lots of emergency repairs in this fund in the past couple of months, so we're going to have to get creative on how we pay for those as well. In addition to user rates and system development fees, storm drainage also has stormwater inspection fees as one of their major revenue sources, so that's helpful. And we have increased the rates, as you all recall, I hope, in the last couple of years. Pretty significant rate increase in 2025 to make sure that we are compliant with the loan requirements from the SRF loan. And we are, I'm happy to say we're exceeding the revenue rate requirement of that fund. So I was really excited that we weren't going to have to look at rate increases in this fund until the massive amount of storm drainage repair that we've had to do in the last couple of months. So we will have to look at what impact that had to the fund, what additional we'll need to pay for this year, and what we need to plan for repairs for next year. That's a lot of the future needs. And again, it's a small fund, so there's very little contingency for unanticipated problems. The fund balance is just a little over $1 million. And so we've been building that fund over the last few years as that's really strengthened in its formality. But we do now have a debt service reserve that we have to hold. And then our operating reserve is about $117,000. So we have less than $500,000 of available fund balance. And Ty's probably looking at that number. We spent a lot of that over the past 2 months in emergency repairs. So when we bring the last budget revision of this year, it will be, I'm guessing, predominantly emergency repairs. And what we had to do, we always look to see what projects did we budget this year that have savings that we could reallocate to some of the emergency needs. We're doing internal conversations of prioritization. Is there something that happened now we had to repair that trumps, what we thought was a great idea January 1. So we'll do that work before we ask City Council to reappropriate anything additional out of the fund balance of these funds, but I do think that there will be some requests at the year end to make sure we have budgeted and included in our records what some of those emergency repairs were. And then just looking ahead at the budget timeline, I promise we'll have 5 more opportunities to talk about the budget. My hope is that tonight, excuse me, is kind of that eye-opening, get us back in the groove of thinking about budgeting the costs that are coming up. And we'll have hopefully an hour in each of these work sessions to hash out those hard questions. The next one being supplies and services and capital projects. We won't have a lot of answers at the next meeting, but we'll talk about what some of the needs are, what the contractual increases are, what are some of the necessary capital projects that are the highest priority. We'll start to prioritize those so that we can then align what funding we're able to accomplish, how many projects we can get done. But internally, we've been having great conversations of reallocation of resources as well. So, I challenge City Council. You have a budget as well. You have an SNS budget, a supplies and services budget. Is there something that City Council would like to see done with your discretionary grant budget? Mr. Sims mentioned to me earlier today he's got some great ideas of how to maybe use that money and put it back into your priorities as a council of economic development, of community beautification. How could even $20,000 be reinvested into the community? This really is the time for us to look at every department, every expense, and say, what is the best use for this money? What makes the biggest impact for the community? So please know we're having a lot of those conversations. Please also, if you have ideas, you have thoughts, you have questions about how we're spending money, we'll talk about the supplies and services in more detail at the next one. And that really sets the stage for the real fun one will be August 19th when we talk payroll and the results from our comp and class study. We have initial findings or results at this point. We have some meetings scheduled tomorrow to talk about them. We've got some work to do there also. So in each of these areas, none of them are easy. And we really are just going to have to balance some priorities in the next couple of years of budget. With that, I will quit talking and if you'd like to say something and open it up for whatever questions you might have.
I think you did a good job. What can we answer for you?
Great. Well, thank you, Jackie. I want to say thank you to you and your staff for putting this together. I do want to say that, I know how conservative you all budget and, present us a budget here that's very conservative and based on, you don't want to overinflate numbers. You want to give us the numbers and we hope that we bring in more, revenue or, than we anticipate. And sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But this just really goes to show no matter how well you budget and how conservative you are, at the end of the day, we're going to still start running some deficits. Yeah, granted, in the first couple of years, they're not huge, but they're still deficits. But as we see, it's going to jump up into the $1.4 million range. And that is just something that I don't want to be in the position of doing. I know that you as staff will have a lot to look at in the future going forward, but hopefully that there's a way that we can find ways to bring in, additional revenue into the city and help offset that. I hope with this 1% sales tax increase, if we go since we're going to go this route, and we can maybe put some salaries in there for the engineering, because that all falls under the roads, that will help lessen some of that burden, but not guarantee that's going to get passed, but at least lessen some of that burden on the general budgets and the salaries and everything. But one of the questions that I have, going back to the stormwater there, we've noticed that in the last couple months, we've had a lot of money to put in, and these are just emergency repairs. From what I understand, we're going to need almost a complete rebuild of a lot of that stuff because of all the deferred maintenance in the past that's just has not been maintained on that, and look where we are now. We're probably going to have to look at it because from what I understand, it could be a couple $1 million project plus, and that's just even bring it up to par, and that's not including all the, everything else we need to do with that. So I'm just real concerned about that. And do we have enough money right now, even in the reserves, to help offset those costs? Because I understand there's a lot more coming as well. Just my concern is where else are you going to try to pull from? Is there additional resources you can pull from that's going to help offset that without having to make cuts otherwhere into services that our residents want?
Yeah, and I think the cost allocation of our projects will become more and more important. I mean, we do a good job now for redoing a road, and there's also infrastructure work, and we're redoing water and sewer line and storm drainage improvements also. We allocate out a relative proportionate of the cost to each of the funds that are paying for that. And I think we just really need to look at how some of those are budgeted. I think we have some new engineering expertise on staff that also have some good ideas about how to look at some of these costs, make sure that we're estimating properly for that. And my hope is that as we look at, the wastewater improvements, a lot of times there's storm drainage with it, how we can do a combination effort as we're doing improvements throughout the city to make sure that we're paying out of the proper funds for the improvements that can benefit all of the roads and the infrastructure all at the same time.
Okay, great. Thank you. Questions? Councilmember Johnson, I know you had some questions.
I do. A lot of them.
Okay.
So just I know we're gonna have a series of different conversations regarding the budget, but just based on this specific work session, what is at a deficit is recreation, 17%, based off this conversation.
So 17% is just the revenue decrease from year to year. So now that we're working on the supplies and services side, I don't have an answer to that yet. So similar to the development side and looking at building inspection costs, now that that's an in-house program as well, we're looking to see what those deficits are for some of those revenue generating programs.
That's kind of where I want to see these conversations going. Like, because if I'm basing just conversations off of what I'm seeing today, I'm 17%. That's what I see. There's a deficit based off today's conversation.
No, it's just the revenue side.
Well, revenue side, yes.
Exactly.
And so then industrial and severance, we never really look at that just because we know it's kind of the volatility of it. So recreation, revenue side, 17%. Expenditures, granted, we're going to discuss that next time. So, in comp and class. So I guess for me, what I want to see, I know when it comes to reallocation of funds and all of those components, home ARPA, when we got those funds, they were initially for infrastructure. And I was a part of those conversations because that was a part of making Colorado stronger. And those discussions in regards to that specific funding was to help Evans with especially storm and drainage infrastructure, because we know that is an issue. And granted, in the city, we did allocate those differently. And so as we move forward to get creative and utilize money, allocate money, we need to ensure that specific monies that we're receiving go to the specific projects. And yes, we hear deferred maintenance. We have deferred maintenance, but when we are awarded monies, those deferred maintenance aren't being taken care of. And so we need to ensure that they are, so we don't have to then come up with money later, as we are needing to do now.
Well, if I may, before you move on, sorry to interrupt your train of thought on that. We did allocate money to storm drainage. So that did go to both Driftwood and Chapelleau Parks. Those
5 million. Because we received $5 million.
We did receive $5.3 million total. So no, not all of it went to storm drainage, but that, at least the conversations I was in, was never the plan or the request either.
And
So-
it's not, I'm just kind of bringing up like the conversations about how we are utilizing money. Not to say that at that time, those conversations were a little different, but what I'm saying is, yes, we can talk about specific things throughout the city, but then also when we do have funding, provided for a specific thing, ensuring that we utilize it as a city and collectively vote to make sure that they're allocated for that. But yes, conversations look different during that time frame, and I understand also the pandemic hit during that time frame as well. What else do I have? Question. And then, sorry, I know when we wait till the end, it's hard for me to remember everything, so I may have to come back. Also, another thing that I wanted to bring up when it comes, I know that we're also, I guess for me, what I would like to see, in addition to this conversation, maybe prior to the conversation the next time, having kind of like an itemized breakdown of what those expenditures are, because I know right now, based off here, our costs are larger than our earnings. Granted, today I can't see that. And so it's hard for me to really kind of, yes, and I know it's going to build upon it, but I'm kind of like, I want to know now, just so I can understand where we're heading through each conversation, and I have kind of a better understanding of how we as a city can move forward. But one of the biggest things with the water, like for example, wastewater, I know that we're going to have projects, and I know as we start to kind of look ahead, are we looking at grants? Because there's a lot of grants for that, and then we did miss out on a ton of grants not too long ago. So I just want to make sure that as we're looking at where we are, we're also ensuring that we're finding monies. Because as you said, we cannot add any expenditures. Likewise to our community. When we talk about budgets, for us, if we add an expenditure, it might be $1 million. For a client, $50 might not help them at all. And so typically what I do is help find money for people, like, okay, you can't add, but let's find money or let's increase somewhere. And so I guess what I'm trying to go with all of this is, how are we mitigating what's happening, and how are we looking to find monies, revenues, and especially when it comes to utility? Are we, for example, an idea, our community, we charge them specific water rates. Are we charging the same to oil and gas? Is there an opportunity there to also increase revenues? Just things like that. Like, are we looking at it holistically?
Yep, and we do, in each of those rate studies that we've done for all three enterprise funds, it's the cost to provide that service. So commercial rates are different than residential for that exact reason, that commercial businesses, have a different impact on those systems than residential customers. So yeah, our goal is always that those rates are designed appropriately to cover the cost to provide those services for those types of users. So yes, and if you're aware of grant programs that we missed or didn't apply or should have, please, anybody, if there's options and things you are aware of that we might not be aware of, more than welcome to add them to Cody's list, and we'll make sure that we're looking into them. We never want to say, or we never want to knowingly pass up an opportunity that we might be able to participate in. So yes, we're always looking, we think, and there are some grants that we've put in for some state congressionally thank you, Curtis. We've been on waiting lists. We've been initially awarded projects and then money stalls. We've been seeing that a lot. Programs that have historically provided large amounts of funding to local communities are becoming harder to apply for, and more competitive, and with less dollar amounts as well that we're seeing too. So it's incredibly challenging on our end to help to find those pieces to help mitigate. But to your point, absolutely, anything we can do to help.
And they're also working with Congressman Cave Evans's office as well. We've been in contact with them to get some funding at the congressional level as well for some of these projects as well. So staff's been looking at that. We've been in contact with them as well. So we're trying to find every little dollar we can. Partnerships with other communities, the county as well. So.
But didn't the state just cut their budget as well?
Mm-hmm.
I heard, I can't remember.
I forget the dollar amount, but yes.
And so, yes, I want to go after free money, but I bet it's going to be harder now with those budget cuts.
Anybody else have any questions?
I'll come back when I remember other stuff.
Anybody else?
What is a franchise fee?
Excuse me. We have franchise agreements with cable,
Got it. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that answered that. I was drilling for it, and I'm like, what is a franchise fee? You're right. So, any type of television supplier would then have to pay the franchise fee.
Electric
and coming
and
from that
heat.
world, I completely spaced what that was. I was thinking like McDonald's fees.
Oh.
This cannot be computing correctly. So in your 2026 forecast with your restaurants, are you onboarding the new restaurants in those figures?
We do have all known businesses that are coming online. Dirt's moving. They're coming to the city, included in these forecasts. So, yes.
Perfect.
Thank you for asking that question.
Have you baked in the use tax into the online sales percentage, or is that a different category?
It is a different category.
Okay. And then I know in the industrial being down 50%, is it basically oil and gas is the majority, or owns the majority lion's share on that? Or are you also doing industrial businesses in that capture?
Yeah, great question. It is industrial service businesses. So generally those companies, a lot of them are back behind us on Carson and whatnot, that provide equipment and supplies to oil and gas companies that are drilling and fracking and having maintenance on local wells. And
So you're forecasting roughly $543,720 in that.
there you go.
Okay,
Yeah, very close.
just want to make sure I have everything crystal clear.
So yeah, the oil and gas distribution revenue is that separate line that is
Yeah.
not part of the sales tax piece.
And I really hope oil and gas comes back, and with some
Absolutely.
new bills being passed, hopefully that jump starts, because it's not calculated in this budget, and that could be free manna from the heavens, hopefully.
Well, and when you
That could
look
come
at
back, especially
yeah.
at $1 million. That's an additional $900,000 that we can add, hopefully, if it works. But I totally
and that
get the
industry is
velocity
doing
to it.
well. Really, there isn't a category up here on our sales taxes that doesn't also flourish.
I am really impressed with the 15% increase for the restaurants. That just tells me that whatever's working is working. Businesses are coming in and opening up brick and mortar, and it also shows that we as residents are supporting those businesses. So that really makes me happy, especially hearing that most other municipalities are flatlined and not really getting that. But we will eventually become that, because there's only so much growth that we can forecast for, but not within the next decade, I
Aren't
hope.
we already are that? Because we're
No.
at 0.9.
No, he's
So
talking about-
15% for the restaurants. So
Right, but our
Well,
entire
eventually-
tax is flatlined.
I'm just talking about restaurants.
Okay, sorry.
Just talking about restaurants for the long-term forecast, because you can only build so many brick and mortars. You asked a question I'd like a little bit more clarification on, is your drilled-in expense report. Are you asking that question so you know what's going to be potentially decreased in funding support? Or why are you looking at asking for more of a detailed expenditure report, other than just the P&L and the budget?
Well, I just wanted to see, because like kind of, for example, for me, it's obviously our expenditures are higher than
Yeah,
what we're
which
bringing
is
in.
not
So,
good.
so I want to see that. I mean, I know that per conversation. I don't have it in front of me,
Okay.
so that's what I want.
Yeah, and I was just curious if you just wanted, like, boom, 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 and why.
No, I'm a visual person. I
Okay.
need to see things visually just so I can make sense of it and write all over it.
No, that's
I am
great.
like that.
I just,
She's totally like
I was just kind of curious, because I would agree that would be a nice report to have, just so you could, with a pencil, not a pen, forecast where you would
Mm-hmm.
decrease funding and funding support in those different categories.
Well,
those
yeah, 'cause I
different
mean,
GLs.
It's kind of like when you see an expense report, like you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out, okay, where can we reduce, and where would it not affect the city in a major way? You know what I mean? And continue business.
So
as usual.
online
Don't-
sales is
what-
really,
Can I finish that conversation
Sure.
real quick? Isn't that the entire point? We were told that we were going to get an online system that not only us as council members could do that, but any average Joe could do that.
I have it 99% done and not posted to the website yet, but yes.
it's coming.
Okay, so because then you can actually just change it online and
See, and
the
that would be
effect.
nice versus me writing.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's good.
But-
And I
but-
forgot all about that. That's
But in
great.
the meantime, I want it.
I'll make sure that gets up and running, and we can talk about how to play with that too at the next session.
So online sales, a lot of that is Amazon, a lot of those type of revenue capturing devices are linked to the zip code. How much work are you, groceries, thank you, that's the same thing. How much labor are you putting into making sure those are being captured correctly? Like with the zip code 80631 versus 34 versus 20?
Never enough.
Never
Uh,
enough.
The reality is we'll never get everything because we do share a zip code with Greeley, and there will always be the opportunity for it to be given to the wrong city both ways. We may get dollars that go to Greeley, they get dollars that probably are owed to us. The state system has been extremely valuable in this process. So those online sellers, as they remit their taxes to the state of Colorado, they put in the zip code of where they're delivering goods, and it tells them what local municipality it is, what the tax rate is, helps them file directly with SUTS. We get money monthly then through that program for those large businesses that might have sales all across the country. That system is GIS based and is really helpful. We otherwise look at reaching out to companies. If we have new businesses that become licensed with us, even though we can't charge a fee any longer for those online sales, if they don't have a physical presence in our city, we still have a license for them, or we still have an account for them so that they can pay their taxes online with us directly if they don't want to use SETS. So when we see those come in, we'll take a moment. Okay, do we understand what that company is, what they sell? What are the potential for it to be wrong? Do they have the right information from the city to understand what those boundaries are? So that's our opportunity to do outreach there. We do third-party audits. At any point, we have about 24 different audits going on with the outside sales tax company, and they do a lot of large group audits. So they'll say, hey, these are types of companies that might do business in Colorado, might have sales to Evans. Are you interested in participating with a lot of local community, or a lot of not even local, widespread communities to audit this company to see if they are remitting to the local cities correctly? And so we go through, and it's costly. So we look at them and try to pick a few new ones each quarterly. We probably don't add on the new list. Every 6 months, we probably try to add. And then otherwise it's staff time. We drive through, we hear, hey, did you know that you can get this other food delivery service? Okay, let's look at what are some of the food delivery services. Who's not remitting here? Who might we be missing? A lot of that's just manual work too.
Thank you for the clarification.
Pop Mart, the Labubus.
All of those. The lists are
On the list.
thousands.
Okay, good.
Because as that revenue stream starts to grow, I just wanted to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect it, because online sales are really coming through.
For sure. And our goal with those sales tax audits is always compliance. We want them to be remitting what's owed to Evans, and that builds each month. And the sales tax report that Cody put in the city manager's update, you'll see on that back page, there's a number of SUTS filers as well as a dollar amount, and that trending. That grows every month. There's been a larger amount of businesses that report and remit tax through the SUT system. So those types of avenues, I think, although the business community says they're incredibly painful, we work with DOR, and we're trying to work with them to make it as easy as it can be for the business community, but it is working from my perspective.
Thank you, Jackie.
Councilmember Fair, Delaney, or any?
So mine's real easy because it's for the constituents, not necessarily for me. We didn't talk about, but why did we have a $14 million deficit this year?
Why do we have a $14 million deficit this year?
What?
No, we have a $14 million net result deficit.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Oh,
Thank you for the question.
Not the math, the actual reason.
Right, yes. Good.
Yeah, one-time funding capital projects. So those additional revenues that we received in 2024 that City Council approved in the first budget revision of this year to buy large pieces of equipment and address deferred maintenance, those are dollars that used our fund balance, because those were dollars that we got in 24, goes in our savings account at the end of 24, and then you reappropriated them this year to pay for them.
Okay.
Thank you for the question.
Sorry.
Oh,
Councilmember Fair, you have anything?
I don't think I have any real specific questions, but could you briefly describe the program that Councilmember Delaney was talking about that we'll be able to use online?
that's the SETS.
Yeah.
The program that we are going to do. So we have the Balancing Act system, and so it gives kind of a pie chart of revenue makeup for the city, and then also lists major departments of the city. So you'll see general government, and it breaks out, hey, this is IT costs and finance costs and all of the departments that are in those various categories. And what it allows you to do is toggle plus minus buttons. And I'll have a link to it at the next meeting. We can talk about it, and we'll have it live so y'all can play with it. And residents are more than welcome to play with it too. And you can say, oh, I don't think that we should be paying any utility bills. Let's just zero out that budget. We don't need lights.
Yeah.
And,
Overrated.
exactly. It allows you to play with where you think resources might be best allocated for the city. And it'll tell you at the top, hey, you have a surplus or you have a deficit. It'll also let you play on the revenue side. You could say, oh, yeah, recreation fees, we need to be the most expensive in the state. We're going to get $3 million of recreation fees. You know, you can play with where you think revenue additions might be available, and then what amounts of money that might mean for the various departments that you could reallocate. The fun thing about it is it lets you submit then a proposed budget. So granted, it's set with the 25. So with our current year's budget, we don't have 26 expenses in there yet, although a lot of it is very similar for this illustration. You can hit submit. You can put a note on it, and you can say, "Hey, City of Evans, whoever's reading this is how I think you should allocate your money," and we can generate a report from those responses if folks wanted to provide that level of feedback too. It's kind of fun.
Unfortunately, I do have some ideas for some cuts, but they're generally in the $5,000 to maybe $50,000 range, and the numbers we're looking at, that's not going to get us close. So, missing revenues. I would like to see our conversations about our economic development strategy and plans, and kind of what we expect in that area as we go through this whole process. Be curious about that too. McDonald's is an excellent start, and hopefully we'll see rapid development in that area and start bringing some money in off Highway 85 that's not from our constituents specifically. So, yeah.
Councilmember Neal or Mayor Protem?
Well, based upon these projections, I would like to know if the mayor and this council are going to inform the residents of the seriousness of this problem and initiate conversations with the city of Greeley about possibly being annexed into Greeley.
That's an interesting conversation,
decision.
but a bold decision. I am not willing to entertain an annexation into Greeley. I believe, yes, we have some of our own challenges, just like every other municipality has their own challenges. I think what we need to do is just be better stewards of our tax money. We have to find ways to bring in and generate revenue. As Councilmember Farrar just pointed out, with McDonald's coming online, hopefully that will spark some additional development and bring in some more revenue. But I think if you had that conversation with Greeley, I don't know what that will solve. I don't think our residents that live here want to be Greeley. They choose,
Especially on the east side.
right? I think there's a lot of challenges that would come along with that, but I think what we need to do is just later on down the line to continue our educational talks, inform the public, educate them, and then hopefully they'll understand the necessity of possibly going out and having those hard conversations, because no matter what we do, even just looking at general fund budgets, in my opinion, the cost of goods and services are going up across the board no matter what. And there's gonna be cost increase on everything. And I think having a conversation with Greeley and going that route, it doesn't resolve those problems, because Greeley wouldn't absorb our budget, we wouldn't absorb theirs. It would be kind of a mutual collaboration. But at the end of the day, it's not a conversation I want to entertain with Greeley. I don't think our residents would want to entertain that conversation with Greeley either. I think just like any other municipality, we have challenges, and we'll have to find ways to work and make those challenges as less painful as possible on our residents. So
Was that all you wanted?
So basically, we're gonna pass it on to as many of our past mayors and councils have done, pass it on to the next guy and let him worry about it.
well, I think with that conversation, I think we attempted a bold move to go out for a mill levy increase. I think we try to inform and educate our residents about the need and why we are here in this position. I think a lot of it is just, as Councilmember Johnson's also alluded to, is it's increase of money. People are already strained, and when they look at a road tax increase, making that possibly permanent, or we're going out for that, and then there's another entity that wants to increase the tax. It's more and more money that they're not willing to spend. They don't understand the background, the operating stuff as much as we can. They look at the overall dollar. And as I've heard from people, if they had to choose between one or the other, they're going to take the sales tax over a property tax because everybody pays into it versus the property tax, where only our residents do. I don't want to kick this down the line. I don't want to. I tried not to by going out for a mill levy increase. But the fact of the reality is, at this point in time, it's not going to happen. So the fact of the reality is, I'm not going to waste taxpayer money, put something on the ballot that's not going to pass. You know, because then they're going to say, well, you just spent $20,000, $30,000 of taxpayer money for something that you know it's not going to pass. Do I want to kick it down to another council? No. I think we have tried, all of us here, to put forth an effort to go out and try to educate our community and fight for additional fundings. But right now, they're not willing to back this. So the fact that we tried and the voters aren't backing it tells me that right now is not the right time. Again, is not trying to kick it down the line. Right now, unfortunately, is just not the right time. When will be the right time? I don't know, but right now, this reality is not the time.
But this is why too, that I said at the last meeting, all of us need to still be talking with the residents. So even if, say, you come off council, you've seen how many issues we're having. You even could still be talking to residents. So, but I'm not saying just you, you know, we all could. But
Okay.
this is why for me, I don't want to take it out from in front of them. I want them to see that they need to see we are going to have a deficit as a city, and we've got to do something to get that figured out. But it's going to take all of us keeping that conversation going. It can't be, okay, we ended it at the last meeting, it's done. We've all still, even now, got to work towards getting that.
I agree.
Yes, I'm with you.
But the people do not know, as we do, that we could lose the major sales tax generator in two more years.
But here's the thing with that. What are we trying to do to prevent that? And I think this council has made it quite clear, based on what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve, we're not going to let that happen. Now, I mean, ultimately that decision is not up to us, but I think we have shown, all of us, by the investments that we've been putting in the community, especially in our infrastructure, curb, gutters, roads, everything, community beautification, we see other developments going on. I think that sets a pretty clear message. And if that message isn't clear to that, I don't know what else, how clear we can send that message. I think with the revenue that we have and everything that we've invested in there, I think shows not only to, you know, businesses, but our community as a whole that we care. I mean, we see new development coming in. We see, you know, McDonald's. We've seen, you know, the Reserve at Crescent Cove. We've seen Liberty Draw. We see Vector Homes trying to, you know, eventually coming online. We see Naughty Pines add their second development there. We are showing that, hey, this is a place to be. We are putting that money into the community. I think that makes a hard decision for anybody that wants to think otherwise. Maybe Evans is not the place to be. We can't predict the future of what somebody may or may not do. All we can do is make it better and hope that our efforts going forward make that decision easier for anybody that's thinking about coming into Evans and living in Evans and working in Evans or putting a business or staying in Evans. I think we're showcasing that pretty well, what we can do with what we have.
Well, we are trying to get some diversification out there in our sales tax, but I unfortunately am aware of other communities, and I'm also more aware, since I did work for that entity on the other side, not the warehouse side, the more retail side of it, company, and corporate decisions are just totally heartless when it comes to you know, what they see as in their statistics, and if they wanna move it, their statistics say they wanna move it, they move it. And to heck with you.
And then we'll operate within the budget that
Operate
we're
with what
given.
we're given.
And this is basically what we're doing now. And that statement was a bold move, which is a shocking move, but it also brings up the fact that we are in a deficit mode and we are going to respond appropriately. And we'll work within the means what we have, regardless of what the overall revenue stream is. It needs to be a balanced budget. So
I personally.
thanks, Mark, for at least going out for it.
Yeah.
And you worked hard, but it will come to fruition on its own.
Right.
It is what it is, and we operate within the buckets of peanuts that we have.
Representative? I'm sorry.
And that's something else that needs to be brought out in education, is that it's not all one big pot and you can just grab it. And I previously had said that I noticed that one of the former mayors didn't understand that the voters of Colorado, the whole state voted to take and use lotto funds for parks, strictly. You can't just grab the money, as some past people have done in this city, and use it for whatever. You can't go out and buy a snowplow and charge it to the water fund. But that's
Again,
what they've done.
best we can do is educate them and give them the best information that we have to make an informed decision. And at the end of the day, whether they want to believe one way or another, that's how they're going to believe. But we can at least do our due diligence. And
I
try.
think we're going to start doing that. And I know you're going to help us. We're going to start to educate and we're going to start getting out there and informing people so they don't think that it's one pot of money. And we're going to be a part of this together, this dialogue. But we need to move forward because we can't change what happened. And now, from this point forward, we have to say, all right, let's be intentional about that specific thing you're talking about.
All we can do is make it better.
You know, a lot of people can't do their own taxes or make their own budget, and they do not understand governmental accounting at all.
Hopefully the tool that Jackie's putting together is
Yes.
going to be a phenomenal asset
it's gonna
that
be
people
fun.
can try and use, but we're a smart group. We'll be able to nail this out.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Try.
No? If you got something, go ahead.
No, I wanna say this should be our first step into looking at the mill levy increase, and this is why I cannot stress enough, we all need to be talking about it as much as possible, not to the point that it's annoying, but we need to make sure that we're educating our citizens, but at the same time, I will go back to what I always say, the citizens also have to work on educating themselves. There are 7 of us, and there are over 20,000 people, and it's a team effort. That's what it is. So we need to be doing our part, and hopefully they will be doing their part as well. So.
All right. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah, just real quick.
Going back to parks, to recreation. Sorry. Unless you guys want
No,
to
you're
continue,
good. Yeah.
I'm
And
gonna
then we got one more
shift the
thing. So,
conversation.
yeah, then we got one
So
more thing.
I was curious because I know since we're so close to a lot of different municipalities around us, I'm just curious demographic wise and demographic in the sense of cities. How do we have an understanding of who tends to participate in our programs? Like, is it what percentage of Evans, what percentage of Greeley, what percentage of LaSalle or Kersey? Do we know what that looks like? And the reason why I ask is because, again, the revenue part and also like getting people engaged. I mean, is it a different city sustaining our recreation park? I mean, do we, you know what I mean? I just want to see what that looks like. So as we move forward and we're also considering a strategic plan or what have you, we have information to make sound decisions and really take our city forward. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Anybody else? All right. Seeing none. Thank you so much, Jackie. Appreciate it. Thank you to you and your team again. Appreciate it. Looking forward to continuing this discussion. All right, next item on our agenda is the update on the city's code enforcement efforts, and we'll hear from staff.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. For the record, Peter Wysocki. I'm being joined with Bethany Pasco, where we'll do our presentation today. But before I start, just do want to acknowledge our Neighborhood Services Division staff, Bethany, Myra, who's in the audience. And I don't see Derek, but Derek is also a member of our staff. Being a code enforcement officer, it isn't easy. Right, we're dealing with code violations, sometimes very unhappy customers. So it's really a tough job, but a very important job for the city of Evans as we try to reach community beautification. So I just want to acknowledge their hard work and dedication. They do a tremendous job with limited resources for our community.
We appreciate their hard work,
Very
absolutely.
much.
Yes, we do.
So the purpose of tonight's work session is just to go over our caseload, address some questions raised by some council members, and just kind of give you an overall update on the RV ordinance that was passed by the council last year. We've had some, obviously, several months now, almost a year or so, enforcing the ordinance. So just kind of give you a synopsis of where we are, and also dive into maybe some opportunities for improvement in our programming, as well as the efforts that will be coming forward to council later this year with some targeted code amendments. But first, I want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about community beautification. And I'm kind of purposely want to talk about this briefly just to kind of prime you for the discussion we'll have during our strategic plan. Obviously, one of your goals is community beautification, but we haven't really defined that. So, yes, code enforcement, nuisance enforcement is part of community beautification, but it's not the only ingredient to achieve that. There are many other aspects. We will not get into those here today, but I do want you to think about that as we work over the next 12 months on our strategic plan, and as we have our dialogue here tonight, that yes, tonight's conversation is about code enforcement, but community beautification is also about other things. Community pride, just vibrancy. We were talking a little bit about economic development and economic vitality. And there's a lot of definitions on what economic vitality is versus maybe economic development. Economic vitality is just having a buzz around the city, people wanting to come here, locate, start their businesses, build homes, rooftops, so we can support our retail sector. It's just general appearance of the public realm. And what I mean by public realm, it's really just the appearance of our infrastructure, sidewalks, streets, medians, not just the private properties, but also basically what we see when we drive around. That's kind of critical. And again, we've touched about this in our comprehensive plan a little bit. In our community plan is the topic of placemaking. You know, Evans doesn't really have a downtown to kind of showcase and kind of build that pride and for people to congregate and enjoy Evans. So having placemaking and just quality development and redevelopment. So all of those are, quite frankly, ingredients of making a community, quote unquote, beautiful. It could be vibrant. It could be not necessarily, gingerbreaded. You know, we go to some communities, particularly mountain or ski towns, and they're, yes, and there's quality development, but it's not sort of natural, right? So having that natural character is critical to making a community a livable and a desirable place to live. So those are just high-level things I want you to start thinking about, particularly as we dive into our strategic plan over the next few months. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bethany to discuss some of the statistics for you and some of the hard work that goes into our day-to-day operations.
Thank you. So, as you can see by this slide, the weeds and brush ordinance is our most common violation that we're seeing in the city. These are trends from 2023 when our current system went online to June of 2025. And you can see just weeds and brush is like 34.8, almost 35% of our time is dealt with weeds and brush. The one thing I will reiterate as I go through these numbers is it's important to know that once a case has been initiated, say for weeds and brush, that's valid for 6 months. And so we don't reinitiate a new case. And so while it's saying 35% almost of our time, in reality, we have people who will go back into violation multiple times through the year, but it's not adding to that number. So that number is probably even substantially higher than what it's showing on there. But I mean, it is still our main violation by far of what we're seeing. The next one is trash, junk, outdoor storage. That can be anything from tires to unused building materials to literally trash, mattresses, furniture, appliances, that kind of thing. And that was 18%. Next, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay.
Talk about it.
There you go.
Next is inoperable vehicles. And that is 17% of our time dealing with inoperable vehicles. But the same as what I described for weeds and brush is for any of these cases. So maybe we have an inoperable vehicle and they remove it for a week and then it comes right back. So we don't reinitiate another case. We just send the citation, and then after a week, we schedule it for court. Our job really is to educate the public. We're not going out trying to hit a quota or anything like that. Our job is to try and educate them as to what the codes are, what the minimum standards are that have been established for the city of Evans. And so that's what we're educating people. So we don't re-educate them if that violation occurs within 6 months. They know they need to cut the weeds. They know they need to keep the inoperable vehicle off the property or registered or in the garage. Next is hazardous trees, about 10% of our time dealing with that. And so those are our most common violations that we're dealing with. We listed all of them, including an all others category, but those are our most common ones. And I believe those are in your packet for review. I wanted to show you the locations of where we're dealing with. So as you can see by this, we don't have to do a whole lot west of 47th Avenue, or even 35th Avenue, because you're dealing with HOAs. And so HOAs tend to do a lot of their own policing, if you will, with codes. So what you're seeing is other sections where the HOAs either aren't as predominant or they don't exist at all. So you'll see East Evans has quite a bit going on. You'll see down by Prairie Ridge or Prairie View and up in those areas that there's quite a bit going on. You'll see by Chapelo and even State Farm Road. We have quite a bit that goes on down there. We're in there quite a bit. So this is a map that shows you, number one, it's going to tell you what the violation is by the color, and then it's going to tell you location where we're at a lot of the time. So our typical enforcement process, which I kind of hinted at earlier, so we either I'll start off with the complaint. We get a complaint, we try to go out within 24 hours or the next business day. We try to make contact if it's not a multi-unit where we can't tell who's causing the violation, it's an apartment building or a vacant lot. In those cases where we can make contact, we knock on the door, we try to explain the violation and have a conversation. We post it if they don't answer. We have gotten body cams, and so we can record those interactions with citizens. That's utilized for training purposes and for protection. We then come back to the office and mail that same, we create a notice of violation that we mail, and then we re-inspect depending upon the violation, the dates, and then we either close or issue a citation. When it's something minimal like weeds or trees that just need to be trimmed, we then send the citation and schedule an abatement right away. When it's something like that's more on the private property, like an in-op vehicle or something behind a fence or something that's going to cost a lot of money, like removing a whole tree, then, or something of value, then we schedule it for court. And we go out, we serve those individuals, and we have court here, and then the judge. That process, which Drew works with us on, is fantastic. We have very much have had quite a bit of success with that. It's very rare that we don't. In those few cases where we cannot get service, or someone has deceased and they've not taken the property through probate or something like that, we send a citation once a month, which we try to avoid, but that's the only way you're going to get any of their attention, because they're not, I have several cases where they're just not, they're avoiding service and either deceased or no way to get a hold of them. Graffiti, our policy is to go out, look at that. Right now, it's the private property owner, or in cases where it's city owned. If it's a private property owner, we again try to talk to them, and then we have a pressure washer that we can loan out if they sign a waiver. Otherwise, we give them time to correct the violation, and then we mail it. If they don't do anything, we mail the violation, and then we again hire an abatement contractor to go out and take care of it.
Yeah. One thing I would just add about graffiti, it's one of those things that we want to have it abated as soon as possible, because one graffiti breeds more graffiti. People just want to compete and so on and so forth. So it is one of those critical components where we try to reach abatement as soon as possible, particularly if there's any type of gang graffiti or any type of thing like that. It's utmost importance to get that abated as soon as possible.
The RV and vehicle parking, again, we inspect the property, the violation, or we see it, and we try to make contact. If not, we post it, and then we come back and mail another more specific notice of violation than the one we post. And then we go out and re-inspect, and then we either issue the citation or close the case. Those all go to court because of the monetary value associated. I can tell you I only have one case that I can think of that has gone to court for an RV on the east side, and I think they finally settled out of court, but it's taken about a year. Homeless camp cleanup. When we get report of a homeless camp, we notify Evans Police Department. They go out and talk to them and tell them to move along, or they can issue a no trespass order. And then after the site is abandoned, if it's public property, then Public Works Operations tends to go out and clean that up. If it's on private property, then we notify the homeowner that they need to get that cleaned up. So that's our process. The new RV and equipment ordinance, some of the possible improvements that we're noticing is it doesn't specifically clarify that people can't park on the front yard. And so we used to have a code in Title 10 that told them that any vehicle parking had to be next to the nearest property line where the garage was, and it had to be rocked, kept entirely free of weeds. The camper ordinance does talk about the surface and it talks about the weeds, but it doesn't talk about where. And so we are running into issues with people parking in, as you'll see in a moment, in front of their front door, on their front yard. They just rocked the entire front yard. And so that's where they're parking, close to you. Access to vehicle registration records. Most, even camper RVs, most are backed in because they don't want to pull out onto a road and not see what's behind them. And so in almost all cases, we're running into people backing these trailers, RVs, etc. They're backing them in, and we have no way to verify. Even though it's a public record, we have no way to verify whether the plate is current or not. Streamlining communication with Evans Police Department. We have a new chief, and as a result, we're working on this. I foresee this getting much better in the future. We are hoping to transfer on-street parking enforcement to our section, really for a couple of reasons. PD is so overwhelmed, and we want their CSTs to be able to concentrate on accidents or backing up the police or dealing with the animals like dog at large, barking dogs, that kind of thing. And then the other reason is we commonly get yelled at because somebody will take a vehicle that police has put a sticker on from the road and they'll park it in their driveway. Well, it's still a violation in their driveway. And so we will send a letter or try to make contact, and we get screamed at for that. And so if we're making that initial contact, we can tell them, hey, by the way, if you pull it onto your property, there's going to be an issue there too. Establishing a standard on when to start the clock. So we are running into it. The code says you can have a camper trailer expanded, connected while you're getting it ready. It doesn't say how many times in a year you can do that. And so you can have one that goes out and we drive by and 1 week it's expanded and maybe they take it that weekend, and then the next week it comes back and it's expanded, and then they tell us they take it that next weekend, and then you come back and it's expanded. There's no way to do any enforcement on that portion of it. There's no clear protocol on how to start the clock on that. And then repeat and chronic offenses. We just have individuals who will repetitively do the same thing. So this is one where they're parked directly in front of the door. You can't see their door right there. But this is the front yard. They just rock the entire thing. And now their whole property has become a parking lot.
And we've explained how we deal with these situations, the combination of Title 18 and Title 8, single-family residential landscaping standard requirements, where it says, 75% of area has to be, landscape. We don't clearly define, differentiate between landscape, hardscape. And this isn't unique to the city of Evans. Many communities struggle with this, where someone has a few cars, right? So they don't want to park on the street for whatever reason, so they park kind of in their front yard area. Front yard setback is really typically, right, 20, 25 feet, depending on the zoning, from the front property line. Typically, it's the edge of the garage or the front of the garage, and So we're not the only ones that have to address this issue, but people get pretty creative and they park cars so I think better, clearer definition of what a front yard landscape area is and what it allows, what it does not allow, whether it be an RV, a vehicle, carport, or any type of thing like that. I think our code just needs some clarification.
This is an example of if you actually zoom in the next slide. So it does state in there that the surface has to be sufficient to not allow ruts or
Has to be an improved surface.
correct.
And
And
that's not.
boy, this was an argument. Oh my word, because he bought this as recycled gravel, and when he installed it, he just kept telling us it just needs moisture and it needs to be compacted. And so after I brought this picture to his attention, this individual rented a compactor and he went out and compacted it. But now if you drive by, I can't tell if it's sinking or not because he put bricks under this. Not the whole property, not the whole driveway, just under these sections. So just a workaround that people discover.
They're gonna find a hole.
Oh, yeah.
I would say there's loopholes in every law. They're gonna find.
Here's an example of one that was parking in the front yard, on the yard.
So that one's not even an improved surface.
That was a clear violation. I dealt with that.
Here's a really fun one right here.
Yeah, this is one.
Definitely a violation, yeah.
Yeah, I told him that he was obstructing the sidewalk, and he said, in fact, the wife yelled at me and said, they can walk around. We're not obstructing it. It's about 4 feet from that to the bottom, so, I mean, a kid could walk under it, I suppose, but not most adults.
Why we have sidewalks.
You could walk under that.
Yeah, so these are things we're running into, and in this particular case, I told him, I can't give you any time to obstruct a sidewalk. I can't tell you you can have 24 hours, 48 hours. You're obstructing the sidewalk, and you're not allowed to do that. So if it comes back to the property and it's in the driveway, unless you're working on it and I can see you, you're going to get a citation for this. So.
Yeah, which you should.
Guess cones make it a little better. The next, this slide here, and I'll let Bethany kind of explain the challenges, but this is kind of where we're talking about the public realm and current code does put the onus on the property owner to maintain the private property between the public right-of-way and their property. But yet we continue to run into these issues. About people just not maintaining that area, back of sidewalk and so on and so forth. So
Hey,
it's your perception.
You mean people not maintaining that back part?
Okay.
Isn't that
They have
No,
fences that
that's-
open, and we
But isn't
said
that
that they
city
had to
easement?
start taking care of that.
That's public.
So this is why we're bringing it to your attention, because historically we have done it, but we are, as every department, trying to be more fiscally responsible, and we just don't have staff to do this kind of maintenance. And so the code does read that it is the property owner's responsibility to maintain up to the edge of the street. And so if this were a lot that faced a street, they would be getting a notice of violation. And because it reads in the code and it doesn't say excluding properties that have put a fence, it just doesn't say that. And so this is going to be something that we start enforcing. And this will involve snow as well. So during snow season, this is their responsibility technically to maintain. And so you might start hearing some phone calls when this goes into effect.
Bethany, I've told people for years on San Juan Circle that they're actually responsible on the corner for cleaning that walks, but then when they put in 17th Avenue, Evans declared that that was a arterial and they were gonna maintain it. And, I always clean the walks, used to clean the one on 17th until, but now if they get a real heavy snow and they plow it onto the sidewalk, it just tears up the snow floor trying to go through it.
So we do have a policy that if we've put the snow on the sidewalk, we will take it off. We're not gonna create a violation for somebody. So we do have that policy, but you will start hearing
But
people.
I'm glad you have that policy because Greeley does not. And it infuriates me every time that snowplow drives past.
Can we go back?
Go
and then
back to the,
Yeah, this is one of those situations where obviously with limited resources, you devote resources in one aspect of city services, then other services are not being taken care of. So we bring this to your attention just because this is something that particularly homeowners, they feel strongly that, it's behind my fence, can't do it, it's either inconvenient or so on and so forth. But the fact of the matter is, both in Title 8 and Title 18 of City Code, very specific that it's their responsibility. Again, it just comes down to our resources, availability of not only just human resources to go out there and do it, but also obviously being fiscally responsible, particularly with limited budgets.
At the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Continue.
I'm trying not to forget to ask this.
Write it down.
Question? No? Move on.
We'll continue. We'll ask questions then.
Yep, I think this is just our summary question, our slide right here.
So these are the code sections that I've been working on to try and correct some of the issues that we've called out today and explained, or that we've seen in general. The ornamental and native grasses in residential zones, this is something that we'll bring to you. We've had a homeowner who tried to claim that they couldn't mow their yard because they were trying to grow native grasses in it. And so we're going to bring this to your attention to see if that's something you want to see or not, that's exempted. No bare dirt. This is for water conservation as well as not creating dust bowls. The no bare dirt ordinance that we're proposing. Parking in front yards, dealing with that camper trailer and other vehicles that might do that. Tree stump removal. So right now it says you have to remove a dead tree, but it doesn't say where. So I had one individual who cut it and left it at 12 feet. And I'm like, no, that's not really cutting it. So we're very clear in this category code proposal. Vehicles for sale. We want to add that if you have a vehicle for sale, it can't be parked in any right-of-way or on the front yard, and it has to not be an inoperable vehicle. It has to be maintained so that it's for sale. Maintaining on-site improvements. Whether that's parking, driveway, sidewalk, maintaining it on the property to where it's not falling in a state of disrepair, and posing a safety. Some driveways get so bad that if you were to walk to the front door, you could trip just trying to get up there. Relocating prairie dogs from Title 6, which is predominantly the police department chapter, to Title 8 because we regulate those. So putting them in our nuisance code, and then cleaning up the RV section again. In Title 18, we found another spot where it talks about a camper trailer, and we just forgot to, it's just some housekeeping stuff.
And that's it. And then we will continue to work with, obviously, other departments, particularly Public Works Operations and Police Department, just to improve that communication coordination with other efforts. But particularly the PD, as I mentioned beginning of the presentation, it's sometimes a job that can escalate. So we want to have that direct communication with PD, make sure that we're helping them Obviously, they have other priorities. I want to make sure that items that could be handled through a civilian process and could be transferred, that we will continue to do that. So with that, here to answer any questions you may have and take any comments.
Great. Well, thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it. Thank you, Bethany, to you and your staff for getting this together. Thanks for everything that you do. Go ahead.
I have a question. So back to that slide before I don't want to forget. You know how you mentioned it's up
This
to,
one?
yes. And granted for that one doesn't have, you know how some places have like the sidewalk and then additional grass? Is that additional grass also the property owners? Okay, now going back to that specific if property owner, because then you also have property owners that say, you know what, on that other side, they have a tree there or they have this. So because it's the property owner's discretion to take care of it, make it look, can they add stuff to it now?
Yeah, we have several properties who have rocked it,
Okay.
and that's part of the issue is it becomes very difficult for our operations team to do one section and then not touch this at all and then do this section. And so, yeah.
And then going back to this also, I think, because where I live, we have an HOA. And I have mentioned that to them and they said, no, we can't no one can take care of it. It's a city's situation. They wanted to take care of it kind of situation. This is a while back. But now, what was that? That portion to mow it down.
Right, sure, yeah.
Yeah. And so because for me, it's also a nuisance, you know, kind of situation. But knowing, I guess going back to that specific thing, are we contacting HOAs and letting them know, again, going back to that whole conversation, you know, letting, hey, that's your problem now kind of thing. Or the residents' concern to take care of it.
So they're very limited in locations of where this is. Predominantly, most residents know it's their responsibility. It's in those sections where the fence goes a very long distance and the residents have not put a gate or something to where they can get out there. So those are the sections. So we will send courtesy letters to those individuals so they know. And we will do Facebook blasts and we'll do everything we can to get that out and contact HOAs.
And I'm happy we're having this conversation because I have had an uptick of emails recently. And one of the things that came up was, oh, I'm planning on repairing my fence or, you know, getting a new fence, but I don't know why I need a gate. So now because they face that road and they have that situation, I think it would be great for us to also let them know the reasons for that gate is because you're taking care of that. And so because I would hate to see people investing and not putting that gate and having to come back and do it. Because I can tell you there's several that are considering that based off emails. And so it's good to know. The other thing I wanted to mention was trees.
Yes.
So I do have also someone that reached out to me in regards to trees. You mentioned when it's on private property, how would they go about taking care of a tree that they want to remove? Do we have like resources for them, or do we have like a list of, you know, people that can help them mitigate that concern?
They would just hire a tree company
Yeah.
Or is there permits, I guess, that they would
to remove
need?
a tree. No.
No? Okay, perfect. That's the other thing was, okay, weeds and brushes. You stated it's close to shy of 35%. Is there a way to capture the additional trips with that software?
No.
Is there a way for us to utilize GIS to capture those additional trips and then quantify it?
We would have to do it physically.
I mean, manually.
Yeah, manually.
Manually? Okay, and the reason why I asked is because I had also a landscaper contact me in regards to native grass. They're in between two different HOAs, and so there's a concern on education, understanding, because it is native grass and you're supposed to cut it at a specific height. There was a violation, which is why this has been rehashed a year later. Granted, I think there's inlets in that area, and so I guess for council, it would be advantageous for us to consider, do we want native grass in areas that look, in those specific areas? or do we not?
Well, we'll look at that when they.
I
bring
know
their
what you're
recommendations.
talking about, the property.
Yes.
That one is in a drainage area, and so we discussed that with, operations, the public works director, and they met with those individuals and told them that they needed to be trimmed because it was a drainage area, so they're not meeting the normal native grass, like where you can let it grow and go to seed. They can't exceed 12 inches in height.
And is there information that I can provide the HOAs in that vicinity so I can go out and talk to them and show them, hey, as far as education, so they have that understanding? Because I think when it comes to native grass, some want to cut way shorter because of aesthetics, not understanding that native grass can't be cut that short because otherwise it won't replenish itself. So I think that's kind of the big one of the reasons for that conversation. The other thing also with the homeless encampment, are we providing also resources if we go out to people that are unhoused so they can ensure housing or start that process?
So we have pamphlets that talk about various shelters, food pantries, 211, of course, that we have in each of our supply kits that we have with us.
And then last, trash and junk and outside, it's almost 19%. Do we have which zone is it's kind of like what zone are we constantly frequenting? We don't.
There isn't just a specific section.
The system that we're on, does that help provide that, like provide that kind of data?
I could have them do that. I'm sure I could have them create that report. I think what you would find is that it's scattered
Okay.
across.
Are you referring to geocoding the violations? Like have a heat map or?
No, just like a zone for that specific type of violation. Like, is there a specific area that it's a constant, that we're constantly going to, just to kind of see how we can mitigate?
I can tell you one area is State Farm Road. We are there all the time.
Something similar to
They
this.
claim that there is dumping. I think a lot of it, if they looked, would be more tenants moving out, but they do claim a lot of dumping in that area. I've suggested that they put signs up that say cameras and violators will be prosecuted, because people will tend to go to the next one that doesn't have that if they see that sign, and just the accusation will make them move in most cases.
So, thank you.
Anyone else?
Nope.
No, you had your hand up first, go ahead.
Nope.
Go ahead, Councilmember Crabtree.
First of all, I love the map. Right away it showed up, everyone was zooming in to their neighborhood to see what's going on. That was
That
entertaining.
Crabtree.
I'm doing a full remodel, so I am
Oh, wow.
a mess right now. How many code enforcement officers are there?
3.
Well, manager and 2 officers, so.
Two
a total of
full-time?
3 FTEs, yes.
Okay. How do we deal with roosters?
Evans Police Department.
Okay. Just curious if the new police chief has a drone. There's a rooster that's
like-
waking me up on a daily basis, but that's okay. But I do have another question. You have a lot of inoperable vehicles, 8.24.100, 10.04. Why is the code enforcement not issuing citations for vehicles with outdated plates or expired plates? If you are in the field that much, why are we not in that department? And are we relying upon just the police department to do that?
Are you talking about in the street?
Yeah, on the public right of way, outdated tags, no tags, the whole 9 yards. Why?
Currently, the police department deals with everything in the right of way.
Hmm.
That's why we are requesting that we take that on.
Because
We would have to have other things. We would have to have the system that lets us run the plate to see who the owner is so we can try and make contact. We would notify the police department. They would arrange the towing. When I first started, they utilized neighborhood services to do the initial tags on the vehicles, and then the police department would go out and actually tow the vehicle. It would be similar to that.
Okay, so when you do see a vehicle like that,
We
and
would.
you can't do anything, do you just call the police department and say, hey,
There's
I've got
so
a bogey
many.
on, yeah, there's, it's an
If it-
epidemic.
It's, yeah, it's.
It is.
And
There's so many right now
what
that
do
we
you
are.
do? What do your officers do? Do they call the police department and say, hey, I've been driving through this neighborhood on State Street for a month. This vehicle's still here in clear violation.
We had a time where we turned in about a dozen, and we were asked to stop.
Oh, okay. Well, I would be curious if we could get that into your department, because clearly it would be a better use of resources. You could hunt down that rooster at the same time. When to start the clock? The protocol to me is when the infraction happens. So you see it, you start the clock. I know it's not that easy in real life, but through my lens, that's what I was actually thinking about, also with the whole improved surface. I mean, we even had a council discussion that said, we don't want you to turn your entire front yard into a parking lot because your neighbors aren't going to like you. Clearly that has changed, so I need a bucket of Tums to even start talking about this RV thing again. But if that's something that there's a workaround, we could potentially start issuing that. So why is the for sale vehicles parked in right-of-ways under your list? Aren't we
Because-
already issuing citations for that?
So we're hoping
You're hoping.
to have that put
Gotcha.
under our department so that we can deal with it.
Very cool. Who's watching the city? You're watching the residents. Who's watching the city?
Police department.
Oh, as in the weeds.
Oh, no,
And-
we deal with that.
Your constituents.
Yeah.
Cody.
Yes.
Cody,
Cody.
Cody,
And anybody. We tell everybody to call us if they have any questions or concerns. We list our personal office numbers because we want them to call us.
So if a local resident saw overgrowth in the dog park, they could call and then you would treat it just like any other.
No,
Oh, so tell us the protocol with that.
we turn that in to the Parks Department.
Okay.
They maintain their own. We don't start violations on city properties.
Okay, but the chain or the systematic side would be you would notify the parks director, and then do you follow up with them? Just out of curiosity, you just say, "Hey, you have a problem. Better get it fixed."
Yeah, they have a new software called Spiceworks that kind of tracks cases that complaints that come in.
And they
And
just
so-
work off that list.
What I've been doing is adding them in on Spiceworks,
Okay.
but I'm hoping that we can do something similar for parks, which would be like a ticketing system that lets them know, and then they can close it out when it's finished.
I would just hope that we're having the same standards for our own property as we're issuing upon our residents. And my hat off to you. This would be a very challenging position. And I really appreciate that type of hard work, confronting challenges after challenges after challenges. Could become its own challenge. So thank you for doing that, because without the team, we would not be as beautiful as we are. So it's a constant fire hose that you're drinking from. So thank you for bearing that. And if you find that rooster, you let me know.
Councilmember Neal?
Well, when a realtor has a sign on a property and it's not being mowed, do you have to track down the owner, or do you contact the real estate company to get it taken care of, or how's that work?
So the Evans Municipal Code says that we go off of the Weld County Assessor's records. And so we do notify the property owner, whoever that might be. I've made it a practice that when I see a sign, I typically call the realtor as well. Just a phone call. Sometimes it's leaving a voicemail, but we do mail it to the property owner of record.
Well, constantly, the property right to the west of, used to be Ideal Vending. It's at the entryway to the west entryway to, off of Southgate Drive to come and go. And
The one in the county?
You're talking about the county road?
is it in the county?
Yeah.
Is it Ideal Services is
Yeah, you're
in the
talking about,
county?
it's in the county.
You're talking right off of Southgate?
Right off of Southgate, and to the east, right behind what Ideal Services.
But that was
And then
county.
they've also, as you go around the curve, Realtek's got a sign there, and there's another field that's not
We'll
quite
look into
being
it.
mowed. But the one constantly that's never mowed is the one right there at behind Ideal Services.
They'll look into it.
They'll look into it.
Got one for the police department here. 38th and Belmont, corner house. The guy was fairly good about parking his tractor in the driveway, but now he's parking his tractor and flatbed trailer on the street for days at a time without moving it. And as far as I know, you can have it there for about 2 hours to load and unload.
I'll look into it for you.
Yeah, if I could just add, I don't think this is
Yeah.
really the venue to be reporting
let's
specific code
Send that an email.
violations.
Yeah,
That'd
send an
be
email
have
to
more
staff
lengthy
or
discussions.
call 'em.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything?
Yes.
Good.
We're gonna have a lot to talk about, and probably not enough time here to talk about.
Yeah, I got like 3 minutes.
Specifically on this right-of-way issue, the weeds, that's not the proper course of action for us to take. The city cannot decide in 1 year that we all of a sudden do not have the resources to maintain it anymore and just pull out. And that is not Neighborhood Services' decision to make. That's Public Works and Parks, or whoever, Public Works specifically, it's making that decision. It's a huge decision. It would impact hundreds, if not thousands of people. It would cause for people to either be breaking up solid fences, which were designed to be that way, and plugging in gates at every single property along the way so they can access that area. Or we're going to have this whole hodgepodge of different landscaping every 50 feet down our main arterials. It's not the proper course of action to take. It's the city's been taking responsibility for those areas for decades. And they cannot just shut it off like that. We need to have a better fix for that. So I hope I don't receive a bunch of calls from people that are being notified by code enforcement, because that's not the right course of action to take. Super happy to hear about code enforcement wanting to take on-street parking. You're wondering why there's so many on the street? It's because they have not been enforced in years. And if somebody is noticed for an issue, an operable vehicle on the drive, all they have to do is move it to the street. That's it. And it could stay there.
Or
Same with
back it in.
RVs. The RV that's hanging over the sidewalk, all they have to do is move it to the street, and it can stay there for at least 2 days. That didn't used to be allowed until we changed the model traffic code. Detached trailers were not allowed in the street at all. They are now allowed for 48 hours, I think. And that clock begins whenever an officer shows up. So it could be weeks, could be months that those kinds of things could go on. Some other things. Glad to hear that. When are we going to hear more and specific actual recommended changes or code revisions?
So we are in the process of drafting that language. We still need to have legal review and meet with Cody just from a policy perspective, but they've been drafted, and so probably within the next couple of months or so. We'll see. We'll have to strategically plan, bring ordinances together, not to inundate you with big book of ordinances. So we'll try to manage that packet for you as best we can.
Sounds good.
I
It's almost 7 o'clock, so that's all I've got
Yeah,
for today.
real quick.
I just think I do like that, because I think it would be great for us, especially when it comes to the weed component and brush, to be a part of that conversation of what that's going to look like. Because again, it falls under beautification and all that jazz. That's all I'm adding. And thank you, because this is great.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, 7 o'clock right now. Start